Welcome everyone. My name is Simon Hughes and I'm Vice Chair of the City of San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture and Chair of the Policy and Funding Committee. We're going to do a quick roll call from the Commission's attendance when I call your name. Dr. Alberto Vito, Zenzo, Paul Martin, Leanne Kim, Anne is not with us. Abe Hughes. Full house today. Clearly food. You're food motivated. That is excellent. Thank you. Your attendance has been noted. Also joining us today is city staff, including Chief of Civic Arts Strategies, Christine Jones, Senior Arts and Culture Funding Manager, Kip Beichen, and Arts and Culture Project Manager, Gabrielle Romberger. Thank you all for being here. And we send our best to Jonathan, who is not feeling well. Move right along to non-agenda public comment. Public was invited to submit comment on agenda and non-agenda items via web form accessible through the agenda and the Commission's website. Members of the public may also join this meeting in person or as webinar attendees. If members of the public have submitted comments in writing, staff will read that aloud, submitted per the public comment protocol. I'm going to ask Kip to read any non-agenda public comments or following any attendance.
There are no non-agenda public comments submitted. There's no members of the public in Zoom, but we do have members of the public here. So if you'd like to make a comment on the agenda, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Seeing none.
Going to go to Chair's report. First action item is to approve the minutes from our September 8th, 2023 meeting. I hope everyone had an opportunity to review. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as reported? Do we have a second? Any discussion? None. I'm going to, Kip, any public comments?
No public comment, no members of the public are in the Zoom, and if there is a public comment on the minutes, please raise your hand. I don't see any.
Cool. All right. Going to call a vote. I'm going to call your name and please respond with yay, nay, or abstain. And just remember, you don't need to have been there to approve the minutes. An exercise, that's a good use of a comment. Commissioner Dr. Alberto Polito. You. Commissioner Tracy DeZenzo. Okay. Commissioner Kamal Martin. Okay. Commissioner Leanne Kim. Okay. Commissioner Abe Hughes. Okay. And my vote is also yay. Very fun. All right. Now to the fun part. Impact recommendations and tentative awards. So I'm going to ask that Kip Beichen present the staff report and staff recommendations regarding impact recommendations and the tentative awards.
All right, nice to see you all today. Today we are presenting the staff recommendation, which is to recommend to the City of San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture the following 10 applicants for the Impact Pilot Program Awards that were included in your staff report and that we will read aloud today. As background, the City of San Diego's impact funding category supports excellence, innovation, and creativity within the San Diego arts, cultural, and creative sectors through targeted city funding initiatives in alignment with the city's arts and culture strategies and priorities. The impact pilot program may change depending on what those priorities are. For this impact pilot program, the city issued guidelines on October 9th, 2023. In this inaugural cycle, the city crafted the impact pilot program by acknowledging post-pandemic challenges to the arts, as well as historical balances and access to funding within the arts and culture ecosystem, and also recognize the city's adopted strategic plan and its goal to protect and enrich every neighborhood, and the city's ongoing commitment to equity in bringing resources to every neighborhood, and recognizing historical underinvestments in some parts of our city. The Impact Pilot Program was a competitive process open to artists, nonprofit organizations and organizations conducting not-for-profit work with a fiscal sponsor. They were asked to submit an application for a project that would take place in the San Diego Promise Zone or San Diego Communities of Concern, and in response to one of three focus areas: arts and heritage, arts and sustainability, and arts and a just city. Each application required a designated lead applicant. As you might remember when we proposed this and opened this, that may have been an artist or an organization. And each application also required a primary collaborating partner. The lead applicant, whether an artist or organization, was required to be located within the San Diego Promise Zone or Communities of Concern. And as a reminder, Communities of Concern are areas that have been designated with a categorization of having low, very low, or moderate access to opportunity as specified in the 2021 City of San Diego Climate Equity Index.
Can you have the, we're showing a map of the previous meetings? Can you have that?
Yeah.
Sorry to throw off your pattern. I just thought that would be
Well, that's okay.
a helpful thing to have up. Get that right. That's the blue areas.
So it is the orange areas and the blue. So the orange are the Promise Zone, and then the blue areas are those areas designated as having low, very low, or moderate access to opportunity. The 2021 Climate Equity Index. There's a lot in Southeast San Diego, stretching down to closer to the border, and it also stretches up into kind of the Midway District, parts of Linda Vista, and even up north, closer to SD.
Thank you.
Yeah. And both the lead applicant and the primary collaborating partner were required to have annual budgets under $500,000, whether they were an artist or an organization. So the pilot program itself provides up to 10 collaborative partnerships with $100,000 in funding for an 18-month activity period that's divided into two phases. One is the project planning and development phase that lasts from January 2024 through the end of FY24, which is the end of June of 2024. And then there's a project implementation phase that runs from all of FY25. So the beginning of July 2024 through the end of 2025. During the planning and development phase, there's going to be some city organized networking and capacity building opportunities that will help the successful impact pilot program applicants develop their ultimate project. 24 lead artists and organizations applied in response to the impact pilot program guidelines. Of those applicants, 17 met the eligibility requirements. That would mean the application was fully filled out, a primary collaborating partner was identified. We checked the budgets of those primary collaborating partners. We checked the addresses of the applicants and identified those 17 eligible applicants.
Question here.
Yes.
Did we get as many applicants as we had?
We got what we expected. Yeah.
There was a very short fuse on this, right?
Yeah, it was.
For next time, we have the ability and the good fortune to be able to do something like this again. I'm especially given that it's targeting certain types of communities, you might have you guys organized.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people have to really kind of get their stuff together really fast. And so we need to give it a little more time.
And I would also add that it's very targeted. So, you know, many organizations don't qualify, many folks don't qualify. So it's already kind of very tailored to so that's always, you know, just like the sheer, targeting of it. But your point.
I'm already cutting ahead at this stage about the breadth and geographical breadth, in particular of the applicants and projects that we've got. Like, I see there's some that didn't come in, like from, I guess, with the area, for example, I don't think
Not as many working right?
there's time to, really tell. I think we should know that. I mean, we have a very short fuse here.
And if the city council gives us more money for something, we can cement this as a permanent rather than just a trial. Those are good notes to make.
Like, and I just put information as well. I got some feedback from other community organizations in relations to the location requirements. And that, well, it's clear and understood that folks need to have an address in a certain area. The frequency with which so many artists and creators have to move prevents it at least 5 or 6 organizations because they didn't have an address in that area. I think 2 years, I think they were required to have. So I think if we're able to do something like this again, either doing away with that time requirement altogether or shortening it, because a lot of folks are moving every 6 months, every year, and like they're continuing to do the work. But a lot of good folks couldn't apply because of that.
The nature of this community, right? I mean, this is the at-risk type of community and what happens. So we got to think about that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do we happen to know the longevity of some of these boards in these communities? Because like, I mean, if I'm looking at Hector's work, I know Hector very well. The other ones, like they just came to a here. I'm just asking, of the issue.
Yeah, primary lead applicants, have their addresses checked and they, certified their meeting the criteria. The primary collaborating partners did not have to be in these areas. They were awarded bonus points if they were. And yes, point taken. The application was opened very quickly in alignment with the funding we got. It was a 1-part application. It was conducted on a web platform and it was much shorter than our other applications. We had about 40 open technical assistance windows for one-on-one assistance on Zoom. So we opened for that, but very much point taken, but just a little more color about what.
Yeah.
Did you have a question? Okay. So yes, on November 30th of this year, we comprised a panel of local and statewide cultural practitioners that evaluated these applications. And after evaluation of the applications and a bonus for applications where both the primary applicant and the lead collaborating partner were in one of the designated communities, we panel voted to recommend 10 applications for awards in the amount of $100,000 each. Those applications are the Aja project, which the collaborative projects aims to nurture and amplify the hyperlocal culture emerging from the experience of young immigrants in City Heights. This collaboration envisions itself as a professional mentorship program and aligns with the arts and sustainability and arts in a just city areas. All for Logan. This organization will host monthly art shows showcasing as many as 50 local artists along the main corridor, and the project intersects with all 3 of the impact focus areas. Asian Story Theater. The performance aligns with arts in a just city and will be developed from personal experience with the United States Census and exploring if prejudice or disinformation encourages or prevents people from participating in the census, creating a self-perpetuating disadvantage. Kim Phillips, an artist whose project aims to redefine Logan Heights' cultural landscape by documenting untold stories, particularly from elders outside traditional archives, and the project intersects with arts and heritage and arts in a just city. Little Saigon, which at 20 markers in the Little Saigon district will feature the rich history, stories, and events of the early Vietnamese people in San Diego. San Diego Made, whose project, My Creative Journey, Mi Viaje Creativo, is a new initiative that will enhance the visibility of creative success models through free public events and opportunities surrounding a unique residency program for artists. And it will embody some traditional folk practices and aligns with the arts and the sustainability focused area. Number 7 is the South Bay Alliance Association Incorporated, whose project will feature art, music, and health wellness at events in Chicano Park, Cesar Chavez Park, and a yet to be determined park in San Ysidro. It will also feature information about STI and harm reduction. and aligns with the Arts in a Just City and Arts and Heritage model. Number 8, the Urban Collaborative Project, whose project involves recruiting 24 teenagers in the Promise Zone to develop participants into global citizens that will teach them about cultural competency and encourage them to explore their creative identities through different art forms. The penultimate is the World Beat Culture Center. The project will engage the community in the designing of the cultural plaza between the World Beat Cultural Center and Centro Cultural de la Raza. And finally, 2 EGO Theater, whose project Mitos is a dynamic fusion of immersive theater, historical research, and community engagement that aims to create a visual history of community cultural wealth in San Diego communities of concern and intersects with arts and sustainability. Those are our 10 successful applicants, and our staff recommendation is to recommend to you all and eventually to the City of San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture the previously read 10 applications that were successful in the Impact Pilot Program.
2 questions.
Yeah.
One, you talked about the 2 phases of the project, and one phase is about capacity building. Can you talk a little bit more about what that involves, the capacity building component, or is that something that you haven't figured out yet because it's in the program?
I think it's both. We have organized a series of networking events to take place during those first 6 months. And then the city is in the process of identifying a vendor to be a resource for applicants during the planning and development phase. So we'll have more information on that once the vendor is identified.
Okay, so the funding that they're getting, the $100,000, isn't going towards capacity building per se, but it's just an additional tool that the city is providing as part of the process. Got it.
Yeah.
The second is, I noticed that I understand that the applicants could be either an artist or an organization, and the way that it's been laid out here, Kim Phillips is the only artist, it looks like, who was like the lead applicant. The rest are organizations. How does the funding then go? So if you're a lead person, whether you're an artist or an organization, does the grant money go directly toward that lead person who wrote the grant? Yes. So that she gets the money and then it's up to her to share it with the organization. How does that work?
She's not the applicant, so she's the grantee, and then how she works with her collaborator is up to them. In
Okay.
terms of how they work with the relationship in terms of implementing the project.
Okay, so there's no guidelines. Like for me, I'm a little, I'm trying to protect the artists too, so that the organization, if they're receiving 100,000, are not just hoarding the money, but that it's shared, equitably with the artist.
And that's why there's a planning and development phase on it, doing more planning, more budget planning, more kind of planning in general. So we'll be able to provide guidance and coaching.
And there's a framework for that to make sure that the money is shared equitably. Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure.
So I have a different question. Mine is more along the lines of, there are 2 phases, right? The first phase, you give the funding for the study and research planners, and the other phase is for the execution. Not to get too much in the weeds, but how are we going to learn these? A lot of these are virtual type of pop-up collaboratives, right? How do we make sure that the project stays on track? And if it doesn't, how can we be sure that our funds are used appropriately?
That's a larger, obviously, this isn't our first funding category,
But not necessarily this kind of.
we are doing something similar with ourselves, we're north.
Okay.
In terms of just kind of check-ins and seeing how things are going. This isn't a small group, this is going to be a small cohort. So, there's going to be opportunities to point about networking, cohort meetings in person, potentially some one-on-one coaching opportunities to help kind of check in. There's progress report milestones they have to meet so we understand what's happening with their project. And so there are checks and balances in place throughout the whole period in order to help support. But we don't look at it, it's not a punitive situation. We're just coaching and nurturing along the way.
Yeah, but that's what I understand again, the whole staff and sourcing situation with the department. Who's going to manage this? And if it all hands on deck, how is it working from, us executing on this?
So, staff administers the contracts and we'll be meeting in terms of organizing and networking and opportunities. We'll be be working with a vendor once one selected to get their point. And then essentially, it'll be kind of a tag team effort with the vendor in order to work this out. So, we'll be meeting with the cohort in February for the first time. It'll be an opportunity for them to get to know each other too, because one of the key elements of this is also the idea of networking, building infrastructure and partnerships.
So I'm gonna put Ken in the discussion for a moment, just so we can keep following this protocol. Why don't we call for a first and second to approve, and then we can continue in the discussion later.
Yeah.
So is the move to approve?
It's
these
a move to recommend to the
applicants?
commission for.
I move to recommend these applicants to the board.
All right, now discussion.
Okay.
No, it's, I want to talk about this, such interesting, things. To what, Leanne was saying on the Kim Phillips one, is Sister City acting as her business sponsor? Or she's just, okay, she's the grantee and,
Yeah, see, this was one of our first categories open to artists. So we had 3 or 4 artists apply. She was identified, in a competitive group, and she is the primary applicant. She's entering into agreement with the city. Neighbor Sister City is not her fiscal sponsor.
Can I just add that Hector Vieira is also part?
Yes.
Number 4.
but in terms of solo artists.
Applicant, right?
But to Dr.
Hector did a, he was a hit.
To Dr. Polito's point, you will see that many of the primary collaborating partners are indeed individual artists.
For what it's worth, Kim Phillips, while being an artist, she's also the lead of the Southeast Arts team and runs the Hoya Art Gallery, which he brought the commercial in the Elks Lodge. So like she's a member of a much larger collective and collaborative, but they're not represented here. And I think that's the case for a lot of folks.
I was thinking it was, we had talked about fiscal sponsors being an opportunity, so it's just really interesting.
Funding individual artists.
Yeah, that's.
But I want to say to that, and I'm not contesting this, but I think it'd be important to make sure the artists are true. And there's an example, little great, but I just think it's important to reflect on that. Otherwise, those artists aren't going to get the recognition that are in those communities that are doing that work. So anyway, just a point to think about.
Client that also, they were only required to submit a primary collaborator, so it's not to say that they're not collaborating, we're working with other.
Within those communities.
That's the key, that, the intent is to be reflective of and, intentional.
Yeah, I mean, because we have an organization called the New Avenue. I'm assuming that's a 513C, I don't know, I've never heard of it. And they're doing digital archives, so, anyway.
I think that is the project thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Avenue Digital Archives is Kim Phillips' project in collaboration with San Diego City.
Sister City is her collaborator, Germany collaborator.
I have another question. Can you comment a little bit about why some of them didn't pass the screen or were not selected? Give us a flavor of feel for that.
Sure. We collected address verification documents. So some applicants were not able to provide an address verification document, or the address that they indeed did provide was not in one of these communities. We had a couple applicants that applied with the primary collaborating partner kind of budget way over 500,000. So that was not eligible. We had some applicants who did not complete the application, so they didn't attach the eligibility documents or answer the questions. And we had some applicants who didn't identify a partner at all. That was part of it. And we had some applicants submit after the deadline. I think that captures the flavor of probably everything that was eligible.
So that's what the ineligible ones of the 24 winnowing down to 17. Of the 17 to get down to 10, that's a 42% rejection rate. What, from the discussions at the panel level, can you elaborate what elevated others and dinged others? What was were there any particular hobby horses that the panel identified as being, oh, this is a great application, this is something that could use work, just so we can learn and the community can learn for next time?
Yeah, so we had a really great panel. We had really great panelists from both San Diego, primarily, Orange County, as well as from Sacramento. We had community organization leaders, artists. We had a really good panel. We scored on feasibility, statement of interest, quality and qualifications, and advancing equity or decreasing disparities. Those were like the 4 pillars of scoring. I think the panelists really were holding to those criteria, especially advancing equity. And then there was a little bit of a top up for a 1-point top up. Organizations were scaled with a max of 20. We averaged those for the panelists. And then there was a benefit for organizations that were both in the promise zone. So, you know, to your point, there were a lot of applications for them to read. And the scoring ended up being pretty clear in terms of having a top 10.
Was there feedback provided to those organizations or individuals that did not move forward, that didn't get funding, of just, hey, this is for next time, lessons learned?
There was an appeals process to which no one appealed. And there weren't any questions for feedback. So that hasn't been provided yet. But you know, we will have, you know, technical assistance opportunities for other grant categories. You know, if there are questions, we can try to address, but those did not come forward during the appeals period.
Just as something to consider, because it's something we don't do at the OSP and CCSD level. But because impact is new, it's a pilot, it's something we can change and try to perfect over time, would be to provide some, even if it's just from the panel level, some level of feedback, even if it's not individualized to those 7 that did not get chosen. But on a whole, here are some lessons learned from the applications. Here are some things, some best practices that those individuals and organizations can take forward so that they can keep perfecting.
We're taking, I mean, this is a pilot program, so this is our first, you know, it's definitely not our first funding category, but it's our first in this category. The impact pilot program will change, you know, over time, as mentioned, and there'll be other iterations of impact in the future.
I'll just share also that historically, you know, the funding program has provided, you know, feedback as requested. So any organization that applies for funding or applies for funding can receive feedback to, you know, to help them identify ways that they can potentially apply that in the future for a grant program with the or any other place. So that has already historically been done. So that's not something, you know, and we will continue to do that.
I remember that OSP, that it's individualized. I was thinking more in the aggregate, but I think that would be lovely if there, and for those individuals and organizations to take advantage of that feedback, perfecting their pitch to all grant giving agencies.
I had sent you an email asking if they had visual sketches, anything in mind that they could show us at some point. And you got back to me and said, funding recipients have until the end of fiscal year 24, July, to refine and develop their project beyond what was described initially in the application. Will this be something that goes back to public art so that they can see the projects?
No, these aren't public art projects for the most part. These are not meant to be, you know, art projects in the right of way or like constructed public art, you know, per se. I think a lot of the project descriptions are talking about community events and other ways to showcase artworks, but it's not going to go through a public art review process.
Will we end up seeing a more elaborate, detailed portfolio of what they plan on doing at some point?
We'll have more information about the projects. We can provide updates in the context of staff updates. There won't be a recommendation process for this grant category again, but we will share with you these events and hopefully you'll go to them as we learn more about when they take place and how they take place.
So maybe we're dancing a little around the idea of that we're approving the project from the get-go. If something comes in halfway through that we don't really particularly care for, or they in other cities, you know, this is art, it becomes offensive, right? For whatever reason, right? There've been those kinds of things. For example, those kinds of when will we have an opportunity to step in and say, well, wait a minute, this is really not in line with what the project
That's
said.
our job.
I don't.
That's not our job.
There will be another, there's not another gate.
I'll give you guys some updates, right? Give you updates on how it's going, because this is more than just a project. This is building a path, this is nurturing. These are some organizations that we need to do the work they're already doing.
I get it, and it sounds wonderful, but we live in a very complicated world, a polarized world right now, and a very political world. Witness all of this stuff that's gone on with executive presidents, or one of them in fact lost their job because of really not doing what they ought to do as administrators. And so I'm just doing a little risk mitigation here. Okay, what do we need to be thinking about as commissioners or as a commission that maybe something does go a little sideways, and do we have a little bit of a chance to perhaps go back a little? I mean, that's all I process for that.
It's twofold. One is the collaborative network that's being built, because staff is going to be part of that guiding, shaping, being a resource in that. We will also have a third-party vendor who is going to be embedded. And so if, there's some red flags, I'm sure that will be passed along to staff. But honestly, if there's a problem, it's in a budget
Doesn't really take that kind of carefree approach.
it's not carefree at all. It is, we had a process where we trusted the panelists to review. We trust staff who have done their review. And if there is a political price to be paid for these individuals and organizations putting together something that is community focused, that is in line with the contract, they have to meet the contract's strictures. Otherwise, sorry, you don't get the money.
In the contract, we kind of have a way to
That's how staff consider check-ins. So, there are not any different than OSP in that regard, or CCSP or other kind of projects.
There's, to go back to an earlier question you had, it does, to Christine's point, operate very much in an agreement that's similar to OSP and CCSP. There are called out and eligible activities. It's still an expense reimbursement funding opportunity. We'll collect receipts. We have a funding schedule that's in line with OSP. There's an advance award and a final award that's contingent upon a progress report and receipts for both of the two phases. $100,000 is not going out the door right away. There's a progress report and a final report for each of the phases.
So one of my things is fiscal, which is great, you just tell them, and then the other, of course, is just a little more on the lines of just general risk mitigation for our reputation. That's what I wanted to make sure that we.
I'm gonna share the product presentation of saying, I understand the idea of risk mitigation.
Yeah.
But we also work. And pushing boundaries, pushing buttons. If we start self-censoring in an effort to mitigate any and all pushback, then we're going to get the blandest of soup that does not make change. So I would argue that I'm not being cavalier when I say bring it on. I'm saying I'm very willing. I've been on this commission for many years, and I'm willing to sit down and face any political opponents that want to argue that we should have not funded something, or that we have funded the wrong message. Because if the art is reflexive of the community and meets the strictures of the contract, I'm happy with that. I'm not sure.
Not necessarily. Good talking about right now, but what I just want to make sure is that we get regular updates So that next year, when this funding opportunity comes up to us, if you guys want to do it again, we have a better idea of what the positives and negatives were, and how we can, modify it, and was it really impactful, right? I mean, is it something that is of value to the community and to our artists and our organizations? So that's what I'm asking about, kind of like updates and stuff like that. I just want to know about the projects.
Yeah, to your point,
The political stuff is like art is political, period. So I mean, it always is. So I don't think we have much role in that so much.
this is theory of change and outcome oriented, right? So thinking about what are the positive outcomes and impacts coming out of this work. So that will be something that we're working with the cohort on as well. To your point, to be able to try to demonstrate, how it works, what is the factors or things we should, things like that. Whether an impact category, just as a reminder, that is a category that will change depending on how the community, directs targeted funding in the future. So it's not to say that this will happen again necessarily, but we'll learn regardless of whether this is done again or something else in impact comes up based on aligned with cultural planning or other things that we have in the future.
Well, we have to know, kind of like a package that we show, and these are the successes, these are the projects, these are the successes, that we go back to the city council and show them.
I hope so. I mean, that would be, it's nice to have, right? Because we're on the building.
Well, I mean, it may sound a bit ambitious, but I guess I'm back in my head as an educator. I would love to see some kind of final event, a public event, where you bring all these people together, and it becomes like a day of celebration and of exhibiting whatever was done in whatever format. And I recognize these are events within other communities, but something that would really acknowledge. I think that's important because we live in a city that's very siloed. So fantastic, we're giving money to Promise No people, but other people aren't even gonna know about it because they don't live in those communities. And to almost push this to a different level where we get other people from different communities to see what's happening, then we start to do what I think we're trying to. Because if it remains in Logan or if it remains in these communities, that's good. So I just would really like to see that. I don't know how much work that would be, but I think it would be really great.
What's the timeline of what design power?
I mean, anything's possible, this is a meeting cycle, so this will be longer. And to your point, yeah, you can have a day that highlights and reflects and amplifies all of this work. And because that point.
And I think it was your issue because you'll see some public presentation, and if they don't show up, then it's not even paying for it.
Yeah, so what works like how they have like their own timelines of what having January, all the different projects. So yeah, and then they will only release the November.
Even a webpage. Simple webpage, lay this out, explains everything. And you go into a site and look what they did and how they did it.
That'd be marketers, right?
Well, I think because there is going to be the networking cohort, then all of these grantees are going to be in collaboration, talking and under the guidance of our third-party vendor. If we ask them, as one of your points of discussion, how can we celebrate? What is a unifying event? What is that? That can be one of the nexuses around which they know. Any other questions from?
Well, we'll go to one.
So now let's do make public comments.
So there was none submitted, but I do see members of the public here, so please raise your hand.
I'm with All Logan. I just wanted to make a comment. So we are the lead applicant, and it has actually made us with some local artists. But our collaborating partner is the Bartlett Association.
Okay.
So it's another nonprofit, so not the artist itself, he is the chair of that organization. And then also it was missing some other stuff that we were saying.
These are abbreviated project descriptions, and it's probably because you put Hector Villegas in the main field
Okay.
for that, but we can change that on future
Okay.
communications. But he was identified.
Okay.
Question. You then call your name and vote yay, nay, or abstain. Dr. Alberto Villa. Tracy Denzo.
Do it, yay.
Jamal Martin. Leanne Kim.
Yay.
Dave Hughes. And my vote is also yay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Chief of Civic Arts Strategist, Kristen Jones, for
First of all, thank you for all that. That was really a good conversation and, we're noting everything you're saying and we're excited about. That's the thing we agree over time and we got that and sharing your insights. As far as staff updates, I guess the only staff update I'll just give to this group since we're gonna have a fish meeting here soon would be just World Design Capital. As you know, they're collaborating with the city of San Diego. World Design Capital is leading a new grant program called the Community Driven Design Grant Program. This is what we go through today. Application process goes through later today. And so we'll be seeing applications. These are really all communications from World Design Capital. They're leading this, but the applications are open today. So there's $550,000 toward funding community-driven activities in alignment with World Design area and focus areas. So the application period will be open through January 31st. So there's kind of a nice long window after the holidays for application. And then activity period is I think March through November of 2024. So and all these activities will need to take place in the city of San Diego, but encouraging audiences from those types of projects and activities that take place.
Further question, Christina. Do all of the organizations and individuals who applied for impact, are they added to the, hey, your funding opportunities last when we send that out?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully everybody receives it. We'll be sending out a newsletter communication. It'll be in social media. So definitely be getting the word out. We have in World Design Capital using all of their platforms as well. So there's going to be a pretty concerted effort to get the word out about the opportunity.
You know, the grant. Is it a more spread? Is it a certain amount?
It's not a lot of money, but toward a grant program, and so it's there's 3 funding categories. I think, and there's a breakdown of some grants are 10,000, some are 25,000, and there's a couple of 75,000. So it's going to be a highly competitive process in order to get one of those grants. And the folks that get grants through that program will also be endorsed projects for World Design Capital, and so they'll be able to access the design and network and some of the resources that World Design Capital has in addition to that.
There's also, there was initially going to be about $1 million, right?
There is $1 million for the grant program.
And then apparently 450.
So there's also a pavilion process going on, which is a separate program under that, and that is through an RFQ process, which is currently happening in order to identify a design team who can create kind of a place hallmark kind of pavilion structure that will be mobile in different locations within 2024. So that is
That one.
it's going to be announced in January. No, the RFQ has already been done and it's closed.
Oh, it is.
That was in the fall, and so
That's really quiet as a mouse.
the competing, well, World Design Capital was responsible for communicating that. So the winner will be announced in January.
Okay.
And so did get out. They had a huge application pool that they worked with. Yeah. Yeah. So the word you get that.
On the small land.
Oh,
To me, that was rather stealth.
That closed a while ago. It closed earlier.
William Consults.
I think the outcome will be very exciting. And that concludes my report.
Any, Kim, is there any, public comment for, staff reports?
No members of the public are present. If you'd like to please raise your hand.
Right. So, moving us right along, new business for future agendas. I would just, ask that we keep updates on impact category, how that is moving forward, on future agendas, see how that playing out. This is exciting. We haven't done anything like this in a long time. So I'm very, very shocked, to see this moving forward.
I have a question on just this category of policy funding. Is this the thing for the arts? Are we the ones that are the biggest promoters of that? Advocates, can we get a advocacy? So
Yes.
advocacy.
Yeah, Becky and her team, okay, which you're right there. You can actually, maybe, can you give us a brief on what is going on with Penny and, any updates you can find?
My understanding is that it's comfortable with overwhelmingly to adopt the recommendation and it bodes very well for the future. So the numbers we put out is if they adopted this a decade ago, there'd be almost 15 million additional dollars to be able to be granting and stuff. And so I think it's a positive element for the future on that level. And I also believe Chair Bill has been bringing some of these recommendations to the party in terms of the actual outreach plan and craft. So we'll probably hear something that's exciting.
And to your point, where we sort of overlap with Penny is, what can we do with that? What kind of policies could we put out there? What kind of funding could we be doing if we have that money? If we had an extra 15 million, I mean, great Google literally, how big could impact be? How big could OSP and CCSD and any other kind of targeted funding programs?
Really get into those kinds of conversations. Only we start thinking about that. Maybe spend some time thinking about that.
I think it's now that we've gotten a real vote of confidence from city council, then for future agendas would be, and this also dovetails quite well with our cultural plan. And, we're going to get an update on that in January. Say, let's add to future agendas a bit of ideation from our group. What can we do if we have that kind of money? And then we can have if and when things, the money starts hitting, then at least we've got some train tracks already set to travel down.
I think the next step too is now that there was that unanimous vote, then there's advocacy towards how much they are aligning budget, right? So that's the next piece for, goes to the mayor and then the mayor approves the budget. Is that right? Does that sound about right?
I mean, there's a whole budget development process.
Yeah, so that, so that's one hurdle. The next part is, okay, now that it's, just because you said that doesn't mean you're gonna unlock that,
I was there in 06. I remember when they
Yeah.
said, yes, you get it, and then nothing would happen.
right? And then we see the numbers and then we advocate again.
I would also add, I think there are two ways at least I'm thinking about this, thinking about is pre-cultural plan and post-cultural.
Yeah.
And the sense in which that really is going to impact our ability to have maybe some teeth or some sharper elbows.
Are you talking about like we-
In the city and the extent to which there is more money available to think about.
percentage of. I read just a brief
Or like the full,
headline about it, and then I went.
the full percentage of it pass.
But it's still lacks in teeth. We're kind of where we were back in the.
Okay, okay.
We need to go from concept to actual policy 3 hours.
So now we can, Chair Cobot and advocates can give us our marching orders on, as a larger commission to rally and bang the drum.
If I can throw one more potential new business item, something that came up in the retreat that's stuck in my head for a while is the idea of like a cultural fast pass at border crossings. Along the same lines of, you go get your teeth worked on in TJ and you can get a thing that gets you to the fast line and come back across. And to what extent? Yeah, for medical care, somebody got to go.
So hotels too, if you go to a hotel, they go to,
And you go down, the section.
there's another one, you go up and a guy has to check your pass, and if you're fighting, like,
I would love to see the exploration of a similar process for like cultural activities, or gallery or performance or whatever. it is. To what extent that reduce barriers to the further integration of the participants.
I'm gonna show my ignorance here just in terms of federal policy. And that would come, is it Department of Transportation? Is it Department of Interior?
what's Homeland Security?
So it falls under the AG. That's it, they're on the. Okay, so
I would imagine all of those cooks would be in the kitchen.
yeah,
But I would also imagine when I think about folks like Councilman Moreno or like the San Isidro Chamber of Commerce, folks were kind of knee deep in like the nuts and bolts and day to day of the reality of doing business on both sides of the border. People coming across, Councilman Vargas's office. I imagine it would take a concerted effort on many fronts to bring something like that to fruition. But to what extent can we as a city be the tip of the spear of that charge to explore?
in terms of, pilot programs, that would be a fascinating pilot.
And also timely to begin to asking questions during this World Design Capital year next year.
Yeah.
Not to say we could get it done that year.
But at least if we can make some inroads. This is, I'm fascinated by this. Let's definitely add it to the agenda and it could be something that we at least start putting some structure around, who would need to talk to.
Who do we need to talk to?
Exactly.
Who do we already know that might be able to have some feedback and
Or even the wheels, they're already doing it from medical hotel. What was their, ask to get them, right?
We just have to copy paste in their system and to allow something like that, or does it require?
Well, that's not the next step. When you, in other words, when you're going into San Diego, that's when you're gonna,
It's like getting back.
it's not gonna change anything for coming back in. It's gonna change.
So it's really all about managing the line to get you right to the US entry. That's what this is. When you get to the US entry, then that's Homeland Security. It probably has less to do with it. But
It's a different lane.
That's like orders more valuable in terms of the reasonable discussions. So it's really interesting. Yeah, let's definitely add that to the agenda. The other thing I was going to ask you, Commissioner Martin, was the item you passed around by email, the funding group.
was it the Catalyst Arts and Intersections Funding
Yeah.
Group?
Yeah, that's exactly one of them.
Yes.
And it was really cool. I thought you might want to just speak on it for a moment.
Yeah, was it the survey?
It was a survey.
Got it. So Catalyst for some time, or Catalyst convenes groups of funders in a number of different areas. I'm working very closely with the arts and culture funders to convene this arts and intersections groups to explore, just a couple of big picture ideas in the arts ecosystem. One is the ongoing funding of individual artists, do it, who's best suited to do it. Some of the broader narrative elements related to positioning San Diego as a destination for cultural tourism, but also artists in workforce development or, artists as workers and what are the additional needs in those spaces, as well as impact investing in other forms of philanthropic investment into the creative economy. There will be 6 convenings that the group is going to have next year. Most of them are going to be virtual. The first one's going to be in February. We don't have a date yet, but it'll likely be a Monday. We're trying to figure out if it's going to be the first Monday or the last Monday, whatever the case may be. The first meeting is really just going to be a high level overview of where is all of the funding coming from to the arts and culture and civic. What are some of the bright spots? Again, what are the gaps? And that's primarily to clue in the funders who aren't as tuned into arts and culture as you all are. But we're also trying to get a wider array of funders to the table because there aren't that many funders. In fact, there are no funders other than the Arts and Culture Commission that does only arts and culture. You're the only one. Premise comes in a close second in terms of the dollars coming out of the door. But beyond that, if we don't get the healthcare funders and the housing funders and the social justice funders and the mental health funders to think about the creative economy and intersections through the work they're already doing, it's going to be really tough to get more money into that pool. The corporate funders, folks on the table are also another, group that we're trying to get engaged in a more meaningful fashion. So the financial institutions, banks, biotech, life sciences, all the other folks up there in the base and things like that. And really the survey was just to go out to everybody who's kind of on the mailing list, you all included, just to help inform the learning agenda so that it's not just me as the facilitator presenting something that I think you should be doing to get some buy-in, kind of skin in the game from folks about what they want to come together to discuss and what, if anything, are the opportunity for some form of collaborative or collective work to do as a funding community in 2024.
As a catalyst.
This is Catalyst. And as arts and culture commissioners, you are effectively members of Catalyst and you come to every single thing Catalyst does, whether it's arts related or not.
Just one clarification. There are about 5 very wealthy benefactors that we already money coming from arts. There's people that have put in Twitter and
So the individual funding piece is very real, and I recognize that
Sprouses, the Needs, etc. I mean,
they're doing their own thing in the ecosystem, and they play in their own sandbox, which is valuable in terms of the dollars they bring in. Working on it, yeah. I'd love to have you come to one of these because there are relationships that I have, and I don't know who I don't know. So sure, the more other folks can bring in people, better for everybody.
Thank you. I'm excited. Oh yeah, I'm excited. Push for the development charitable. Love for that's a whole separate universe. That
The financial professionals doing philanthropy. That's huge.
Yeah, because there are a lot of financial professionals enabling philanthropy, but do not know anything about.
There are more dollars coming from the financial professionals doing philanthropy overall than there are from the foundation or OPEC.
I did a big check with the Certified Financial Planning Board. I'm the one in all of America, one who has a CFP and a certification in fundraising management from the Lilly School at Indiana University. There should be more people like me. I don't like being one dude in that Venn diagram that means philanthropy and financial management. So I think expanding the education opportunities for people who sit in my chair is a really great move. There's trillions of dollars of available resources locked up in those vehicles. So cool. All righty. Anything else? Great. Not seeing anything else on the agenda, I'm going to close this meeting.